What is up, maniacs? My name is Zach. I am the Milli Maker Maniac. Welcome to another episode of the Milli Maker Maniac podcast. Today, I am doing one of my higher end drafts, the 555. It's a $555 entry. First place in this tournament is $1 million. It is a much easier path to big money than the flagship tournament that they're running, just because there's over 900,000 entries in that one, and in this one I believe it's right at 1,000-ish. Let's see, it shows how many contestants are in here, but it's a much smaller field nonetheless, and then each week, each round, it's much easier to advance. So same out of the first round, top 2 teams advance out of your pot of 12. Then you're put into a pot of 8, and top 2 teams, so 25% of teams, advance to week 16. Then you're put into a new pot of 8 where you're guaranteed $2,000 if you get there. Then first place that week makes it to week 17, which is a 52-person final. You're guaranteed 10 grand if you get to week 17. So a much easier path to get all the way to week 17. And then when you get to week 17, a much smaller field to take down big money. So I did want to take a big shot. I'll probably do 2 of these. I'm getting close to finishing out the flagship tournament, their best ball millionaire, with a $3 million first place and over 900,000 entries. But just felt like I was in a good rhythm of drafting today and was going to do one of these anyways. Just felt like a good time. So we're waiting on one to sign up here. See one familiar name for sure. We got Pat Achane in here. Took down Best Ball Mania a few years ago, and the man who runs Legendary Upside. He's got some great content, so excited to draft with him. But yeah, once we get this other guy in here, we will get rocking and rolling. All right, we are in, and let's see, we are in the 12 spot. It's not my favorite. I would have much rather have been the first or second pick, but we will work with it. I was hoping to get a kind of a rare combo with Genty towards the front of the draft. That was what I was rooting for, but that's not what's going to play out. But we can get 2 solid players at the end of the first and the beginning of the second round, the 1-2 turn. So yeah, not my favorite start, but that's okay. We will make the best of it, and we will get our best shot at $1 million today. We are only 14 days till kickoff. It's pretty crazy that we're this close. It's an exciting time of year. It's a kind of chaotic time of year where we're wrapping up with best ball. We've put so much effort into knowing everything we can know to draft the absolute best teams. But as we're doing that, we start to get a little distracted with the DFS numbers coming out for week 1 and starting to shift our mindset a little bit to there into all of our redraft leagues. And then obviously, depending at what phase you are of the season, I know a lot of people that are listening to this have been probably obsessing over football all off season, but there's a good chunk of people that are just now getting back into it and starting to understand what all the teams have done and all the changes and everything. So it's an exciting time of year, but it's a chaotic time of year because you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions. But I am excited to draft today. I'm excited to take one of my big shots. Probably going to do, like I said, 2 of these $555 drafts. Yeah, like I said, feeling like I'm in a good rhythm today with drafting. So let's jump onto a big one and let's go for it. So an ideal start for me would be like I've got a couple Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb teams. I would love that. But I'd be good with like a Cook Lamb, a Cook Jefferson would be awesome, or either one of those receivers in Kenneth Walker, Devon Achane, or even that combo. So really, as long as I get 2 players from my rankings in Achane down, counting down from 13 would be Achane, Walker, Taylor, Cook, St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey. I would be about that. So hopefully we can make that happen. We should. I guess worst case scenario, we'd end up with like a Walker and Achane, but I can work with that. Interesting. Chase went number 2 in this draft. I've done that a few times, but don't see it very often. And McCaffrey goes over JSN. We don't see that a lot anymore. But nothing too crazy. I was really hoping for either Jefferson or Lamb, but that is not how it plays out today. So it looks like we're going to go double running back start. Would love it for it to be Cook. I don't have a lot of him. I'd like to have more of him, so it'd be nice to have a big share of him in this big tournament. But he goes off the board, so we get Walker and Achane. These are both guys that I think could outperform this ADP, that have RB1 potential because of the workload and the offense that they're in and their skill set. Obviously, I think that they're underdogs to do that against guys like Gibbs and Bijan, but they're definitely not complete zeros to have that occur. Like, they're definitely in that range of possibility with the volume that they're going to get and the offenses that they're in, and then just their skill set. So I'm much higher on the Dolphins having some offensive success this year than a lot of people are, and a lot of that has to do with Achane, but it also has to do with my belief in Malik Willis. I don't think that he's just a stopgap quarterback. I think that they actually are going to decide after this season to build the team around him and draft around him rather than getting a quarterback. I know I'm very much in the minority in that belief, but I've been drafting with that belief in a lot of drafts, and I'm a little bit higher on Achane because of that. So I feel good about this running back room. Would have loved to have a more balanced build and like gone one of these guys plus Lamb or Jefferson, but it is not to be, and I'm not definitely not upset about this start. Obviously, this team is going to be heavily rely on these two players staying healthy. There is risk for both of these guys just because of the volume they get, and Achane's undersized and Walker's had an injury history, so that's not great. But when we're drafting these best ball teams, we want to be drafting with like high likelihood outcomes, but outcomes that also have high upside. And so, are there some runouts where either Walker or Achane got hurt? Sure, but there's plenty of other runouts where they stay healthy throughout the whole year and they are the absolute workhorses for their teams, and they both are top 5, top 3 fantasy football running backs this year. That's within the range of possibilities, and it's not, you don't have to squint too hard to see that. So I want to make bets on guys like that, even though they do have some downside. If that negative outcome occurs, and all the teams that I have with these guys are basically dead. But if it goes the other directions, then I have a lot of teams that have a legit shot at taking it down. So that's why I'm never going to, if a guy has risk, and every guy has risk, right? But there is elevated risk for guys like Walker and Achane just because of their history and size. But we can't run away from that risk if we're trying to win best ball tournaments, because the other side of that risk is huge upside. So I'm willing to sacrifice some teams in order to hit the upside on other teams. All right, coming up on our pick here. Sorry, I should have the draft board up while we were talking there, but probably we'll want to try to go wide receiver here. Could consider a Breece Hall too, or even Jeremiah Love. They gets there as well. Probably want to get at least one wide receiver. I'd love one of these running backs plus one of these wide receivers in Waddle or Wilson. Yeah, and I would do it in this order that I have. Like, I would go Hall over Love at the moment, and then I would go Waddle over Wilson. So we'll hopefully get to do one of each position here. See how it falls. Really rooting for Hall and Waddle here. I think Waddle's going to come off the board because I think this guy is auto-picking. Actually, he might take Javonte if that's the case. Oh, nope, he does take Waddle. So we got Hall. Am I really going to do a Jet stack in my 5-5-5? Yeah, I'm going to do it. Not necessarily where I'd love to do a Hall Wilson stack, but I also can see where it works out. Even if they don't have like a super successful offense, those two are going to get concentrated volume. So from a fantasy football standpoint, they both can pay off their ADPs pretty easily. And then there are ceiling seasons for both of them if they both are having good years. Like if the offense actually moves and Geno Smith can turn the clock back because he's got an offensive line this year and he's got weapons and they can actually have success. Like if they're a middle of the pack team, these guys are having big years. So from a fantasy football standpoint, they can definitely pay off. But I probably won't go any more Jets. Beyond that, we're betting on concentration between those two. I just think Wilson, of the receivers left, has the highest likelihood of having like that true ceiling season. Same thing for Breece. That offensive line is pretty solid. And really, if Geno can play decent, this offense has enough weapons that they could move the ball pretty well. So, again, not exactly what I was dreaming up when I was getting into this draft, but I can see how it works out as well. Really would have been nice for Waddle to fall there. Or Love. I would have loved to have either one of those guys and either one of these guys. But didn't play out that way. I was looking at Egbuka, but the toe thing scares me. Tet is solid, but I think Wilson is better and has a higher likelihood of like a bigger ceiling. That might be a bad read. Tet might have the higher ceiling, but to me, Garrett has the highest likelihood of having a top 12 season of any of the receivers left down here. So that's why I went with him, even though I went with Hall as well. So game planning for where we're going from here. No great stacking options. I mean, we obviously are going heavy running back, so I don't mind the Willis Achane stack. So we'll actually consider that. I like that a lot. I like Willis well above market. I would be happy to have a share of him in this tournament. Sorry, I keep forgetting to put the draft board up. I tend to keep the other screen up when I'm drafting on my own. I was really hoping Watson would fall to me there. Really need to get some pass catchers here. I'm going to go ahead and get Warren. And we're just going to have to attack wide receiver later. I spent $555. The guy that I think has league-winning upside this season is Jonathan Brooks. I've made big bets on him throughout the season, and I don't want to leave a draft like this without him, so we are going to have a robust running back team. We're going to believe that Jonathan Brooks is a top 12 guy, and he's worth the pick, and we are just absolutely loaded at running back. We will not touch running back the rest of the way. So we got Walker, Achane, Hall, and Jonathan Brooks. 4 guys that I'm betting on are all going to be top 12 running backs, and that's how this team advances. These guys are hitting the flex for me every single week, and then we are going to just attack wide receiver the rest of the way out. We got a solid tight end now as well, so we can add some tight end value late, but I don't need to really reach for tight end to get production there. I can play Warren as if he has like his ceiling outcome, which I think is likely with how things have fallen so far with the Pierce injury and with Jones being healthy and everything. I think Warren is going to be a focal point of that offense. I think he's going to eat up a lot of the target share that is left behind by Michael Pittman as he's been traded to the Steelers over the offseason. They do bring in Keenan Allen, but I still think that really doesn't replace the production of Michael Pittman at all. I think that's really going to be spread out between Warren and Downs. And Warren, I think, just has the potential to compete with these other three guys for the top echelon of tight end in fantasy football, and also I think he has ceiling games to come that we haven't seen yet. He had a lot of games last year where he had like big first halves, and then the complexion of the game kind of slowed down and they stopped feeding him. I think there's going to be scenarios this year where they're more reliant on him throughout the game, and he can get those 25, 30-point games that very few tight ends in the league have the potential to do. Really, it's these top four guys that are here with maybe Kraft and Fannin included in that. So I feel good about him being a stud tight end throughout the year. We're making a bet on this team with this draft capital that he is going to be that guy. So we're going to kind of build a team around that, and we'll just attack quarterback and wide receiver from here on out, and then add some late value tight end. The 1-5-5-5 I did last year looked very different than this. Last year I built a gross 0 running back team that missed horrifically, and it also was anchored. I did a 2 quarterback build with Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy on that team. So needless to say, it did not advance at all. Wasn't even close. I think it was 11 out of 12. The 0 RB and your one big swing can feel real uncomfortable, and that one did not hit at all. At all. But this year is different. This year we're going the exact opposite. We're going robust running back, and we're just going to be a chasing wide receiver here. So feel good about our RBs as long as these 4 guys stay healthy. That's the bet we're making. We don't need any more running back points. Those guys are going to get it taken care of. So I probably will take one of these, maybe 2 of these quarterbacks, honestly, because I don't really have any stacks, but I can backstack with both these guys, with Herbert and Prescott, as well as with Lawrence. I prefer not to go Herbert Lawrence because they have the same bye. And it just creates complications as I build out the rest of the team. So I might go Herbert Dak. I'd probably go Herbert Downs, and then that would set up another stack opportunity to get Jones later. And then with Herbert, I'm not going to get QJ, but we could get Trey Harris, Charlie Kolar later on, which are fun little back stacks, and then just lock in solid quarterback points. I think he's very likely to have an MVP type season with Mike McDaniels there. This is kind of an interesting spot. Really do need wide receiver. Dak goes off, so if I do go Lawrence, I have Herbert and Lawrence if it falls to me. Then I have the 2 bye week thing. So I'm definitely going to go Herbert. Now, do I go Michael Wilson, who's fallen 13 spots here, but then have to make another bet on a bad offense or likely to be bad offense? I think I'm going to go Herbert. So go Herbert. Maybe I just go QJ. Yeah, I guess we'll do that. We'll go Herbert and QJ. I don't think QJ is a great value, but he's going to have weeks that he hits lineups, and hopefully it happens to be in a couple of the playoff weeks. I think I'm going to try to get. Hopefully, we can get Willis at this 132, 133. So that's goal for QB2. Or actually, we would, if possible, we'll try to get Jones and Willis there. Also, I'm going to try to get Concepcion with my next pick. It's iffy if he'll get there. It'll be close. It's right at his ADP, but he's been going ahead of his ADP. So hopefully I get Concepcion. If I get Concepcion, that will open up the opportunity for also the Sanders stack, which gives us some fun Week 17 correlation with Warren. And then we could also maybe Pierce falls there too. Yeah, so the next turn we might be able to go Concepcion and Pierce. Pierce was taken off the PUP today. I haven't really been taking him because I felt that he should be going in this like 110 range the whole time because it didn't sound like he was going to play early, like throughout the offseason. And I was waiting for more information and we just weren't getting anything good. So until we knew for sure he was playing the whole season, I felt that he should be going in this 110 range. But now that he is, I think he's a good pick because I think he's very likely to repeat similar production to what he had last year. I don't really think that he adds to that, so I think he was being overdrafted initially, but he can definitely have big weeks. And I also think that the Browns are going to have a pass funnel type defense this year where they're very good against the run, but have a very weak secondary, and teams are going to be able to throw the ball quite a bit on them. So I can definitely see shootout type games, hopefully in Week 17 when we got this stack built out between these two teams. I also really believe in Shedeur Sanders, so I'm way ahead of market on Casey Concepcion. Very confident that Shedeur will get to play and play a lot this year. I think this is actually the perfect run out for him because once they bench Watson, they're not going back. He'll get the run out of playing throughout the season. I think he's going to be like Jameis Winston, I think, is a good comp for him. He's going to have exciting moments. He's going to have some awesome throws. He's also going to have some bad plays. But in fantasy, like that's perfect, especially when we can get him in the 18th, 19th round. So really hopeful that Concepcion falls here. I've been building a lot of teams with Shedeur at the end, with Concepcion and Boston. And I really do think that this Week 17 game has shootout potential that a lot of people just aren't seeing. So if that's the case, then I can get some of these teams through to Week 17. We are sitting pretty. All right, so we got a pretty sweet outcome here. We got Pierce and Concepcion. I think that really helps this receiver room a lot. Obviously, there's early season concerns about Pierce, but early season injuries are the easiest ones to overcome because you don't have to worry about bye weeks and everything. So you have your whole roster working to hit those spots. And down the stretch, I think he's going to be a really solid player. I think we'll see similar production to what he had last year. We can see how many awesome weeks he had. Week 18, 32 points, 24 points in week 17, 17 in week 13, 18 and 10, 20 and 9. Like these are a lot of really solid weeks that we're getting out of round 10. And I think there's some upside there if Daniel Jones is healthy and plays well this year. So, and we also set ourselves up for a potential Sanders stack later on with Concepcion. So that's a lot of fun. So we'll definitely try to get Jones. I kind of want to try to get Malik Willis too, and we could add like Chris Bell to him later. Then it would feel really good about the quarterback room, and then it would just be attack on the wide receiver room. So quick recap of the team so far. It's a robust running back build. With our first 3 picks, we went running back in Kenneth Walker, Devon Achane, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Warren, Jonathan Brooks, Justin Herbert, Quentin Johnson, Casey Concepcion, and Alec Pierce. I'm sure a lot of you guys are questioning why I went Achane over Barkley. I have concerns about Barkley when I watch the film. Feels like that last year he did lose a step. That offensive line didn't play nearly as well last year, and obviously there were play calling concerns. We still don't know if those are going to be alleviated this year, but he's another year older, coming off back-to-back seasons of a huge workload. I think there's a lot more risk with Barkley than there was with Achane, and I think Achane is still on the ascent and has the opportunity to be the Dolphins' entire offense. And that's an offense that I think is going to be better than people expect because I believe Malik Willis is a very good player and is going to have success this year. And when we look back at the study that I did on the website on the Best Ball Deep Dive, if you go back and look at some of these teams that took down Best Ball Mania, a lot of them have quarterbacks that they got late that created a lot of value. Last year's winner, Sam Sherman, he took Tyler Shuck in the 15th round, and he got 6 rounds of value there. Let's see. (2024). It's not really super late, but they got Brock Purdy in the 10th round. Yeah, here's a good example. 2023, the BBM champion took CJ Stroud in round 17. So I think these are 2 guys that have a lot of league winning upside late in drafts. So we aren't going to get Willis. He does go off the board, unfortunately. So we're going to go for Jones here. And then we will also add on Denzel Boston. And set up the stack for Shedeur later on. I got to believe it. And if I'm trying to set up a Shedeur Sanders stack in a 5-5-5, right? Y'all might think I'm crazy, but you can't accuse me of not following through with what I'm talking about. I think Shedeur Sanders and the Browns are going to outperform, and I'm putting dollars behind it. I could look like an absolute moron, no doubt about that, but scare money don't make money. All right, so we do get Jones, and we are setting up that Week 17 battle between the Colts and the Browns. You heard it here first. The key to best ball was stacking up the Browns and Colts with a stack of the Jets just for insurance there. But I think the Colts. Also, look at this playoff run for the Colts. It's pretty freaking sweet. Tennessee, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. That's a pretty nice setup to have a lot of offensive success against some pretty bad defenses. Cleveland, I think, will be a decent defense, but I do think they're going to be a pass funnel. So I really like this setup of it not being a Jonathan Taylor week and it being an Alec Pierce and Tyler Warren week. Also, I think Shane Steichen is one of the best play callers in the league. He doesn't get near enough credit. He hasn't really had any solid quarterback play since he's been there. I mean, he took Gardner Minshew almost to the playoffs. He's had the ghost of Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. I mean, he did pretty solid with Grandpa Rivers in there last year. But when Jones was healthy for the first part of the year, they were humming. They were the best offense in the NFL. And I don't think that the likelihood is that they're best offense in the NFL. But, I'm getting 3 pieces after pick 60 that are all key pieces of this offense and their starting quarterback. And I think they have top 10 offensive upside for sure. If Daniel Jones is healthy, like it seems like he's recovering from this Achilles injury faster than you would expect, but there's been a lot of advances in technology and recovery, and he's a very serious dude. I know that he's been focused on it as much as he can be, and our reports are that he's going to just be playing like he normally does. And if that's the case, he's an absolute steal this late in drafts, and this offense is going to have a lot of success. Good offensive line, great running back. We have last year's league winner in Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor last year, let's see, pull up his ADP last year. I'm going to go into the tournament winner and losers tab on millimakermaniac.com, where you can see all these outlier performances year in and year out. But we can see that last year, Jonathan Taylor was drafted in the second round and had a 48.8% advance rate. He was indefinitely a league winner last year. Now he's being drafted as if he's going to repeat that this year. And we're kind of betting on him having a good year, because if he has a good year, the Colts have a good year. So even though we don't have Taylor on this team, we're kind of making that bet. But obviously he's one of the best running backs in the league, has elite fantasy upside. And then you have the other weapons around Daniel Jones. And I think a more concentrated target volume this year will be between Tyler Warren, Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce. Sure, Kenyon Allen's going to mix in a little bit, but I really don't think he's going to make that much of an impact on their performance this year. I think this is going to be a concentrated offense, and these guys are going to be a big part of it here. So I really like how this is played out, and I can see the way that this works. I can see the way it doesn't work too, but when we're building these teams, we've got to believe in the positive outcome and then just kind of build off of that. And we're building off of a scenario that I think is likely for two teams that are pretty cheap in the Colts and the Browns. Okay, so we need to go. Got two quarterbacks. Make sure we're good on buys here. 7 and 13. Planning on adding Shedeur late, so we just want to get wide receiver or tight end value if it's here. So I would definitely go Lane and Okonkwo here. If we don't get that, then we'll definitely go Pat Bryant. But I think I can get Pat Bryant later. Lane's ADP's gotten a little out of control. Yep, so we're not getting Lane. That doesn't break my heart, to be honest. I think he's one of those guys that looks good in preseason, but when we get to games, he'll have some moments, but I don't think he's going to be a very consistent fantasy producer. I think the hype has overblown it to this point. So, all right, so we're going to go Chig Okonkwo. He's my highest roster tight end this year, but I think he is going to be on the field the vast majority of the time, and he's going to be option number 2 or 3 on that team. And as long as Jaden Daniels stays healthy, that is a role that's going to score a lot of fantasy points. When we watch his film too, he's an explosive player that we just haven't really got to see do much with the football in his hands yet, just because of how he's been used. But I think, if you think of the Zach Ertz role from last year, and then think if Zach Ertz was an explosive player, that's kind of what I'm visualizing for Chig, and he's been dropping in drafts, so I've just been adding to my position there. And then Pat Bryant, I believe, is wide receiver 2 in Denver. I think he's going to outscore Sutton all year long, and he goes, 70 picks after Sutton? 70 picks after Sutton. I think Bryant just straight up outscores Sutton this year. I think he's an absolute smash of a pick. So happy to get him there. Lane, I feel, like I said, I don't feel as great about. I have about 3% of him. I took him a few times in the 20th round back when it was free, but once the hype started happening, I didn't keep up fast enough. I wish I would have kept up more in like the 17th and 18th round, but I did not. and that's a miss. But I do think there's a lot of outcomes where he doesn't really do much at all this year and is way overdrafted off of the hype. So I'm not super mad that on this team I don't have to take him. So we're up to 6 wide receivers. The wide receiver room is definitely the weakness on this team, but we got Garrett Wilson, who I think has top 12 upside. We got Casey Concepcion, who I also think has top 12 upside. To me, so many things about his situation remind me of rookie year Justin Jefferson. I do think early on it could be a struggle with Deshaun Watson starting, but once Shedeur gets in there, I think there's going to be some really big performances. He'll definitely have some wide receiver 1 weeks without a doubt, but I think he has the potential to actually be a wide receiver 1, but more likely like a top 24 guy. I just think he's way underdrafted. I think he finishes over QJ, but I did grab QJ, obviously because of ADP reasons. And then we got Pierce. Obviously has the injury, but when he comes back, he's definitely a top 36 wide receiver. Denzel Boston has some upside too, and also gives us the ping pong effect with Concepcion. If this passing game does have success, you could see those guys having big weeks together as well as ping ponging off of each other. And then Bryant, like I said, I think he's going to be wide receiver 2 for the Broncos. So all guys that I think can contribute, but none of these guys besides Wilson and Concepcion do I really think are guys that I can count on week in and week out. And even for Concepcion, probably going to have to wait a few weeks into the season for Deshaun to get benched before he really could have big games. I think Deshaun is going to be a limiting factor early, but I think that changes once our boy Shedeur gets in there. Okay, I'm actually going to go Chris Bell here. And then I got 2 more Jets, but I think they're both pretty good picks. I'm going to go with Sadiq at tight end. Let's see. We also have Herbert, though. Go Kolar later. I think there's more upside for Sadiq, so we'll just add Sadiq here. And bet on this Jets team having a nice run through their playoff run here with Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Kenyon Sadiq going ham. Chris Bell, I like this pick. I've been drafting him late throughout the year. I just think that he has a really good likelihood of being wide receiver 1 in Miami. And I, again, believe in Malik Willis, and I think that will actually be a lot better than what people think it'll be. We can get him in round 15, but it's looking like he's trending towards playing week 1, which is way better than what I've been anticipating. So now a 15-round value feels pretty solid to me. Like if you can get wide receiver 1 on an offense that I believe is going to be better than other people do, especially on a team that's wide receiver needy. Like if you get a team that's wide receiver 1, even if they're only passing for a couple hundred yards per game, like you can still have big fantasy performances within that if it's concentrated. And I think it likely will be between Chris Bell and maybe Caleb Douglas, who goes before him in this draft. But I think Bell is the most likely to have consistent fantasy performances as well as a higher ceiling. And I think he's a perfect fit for this team. And then Sadiq, we've got 2 solid tight ends, but Sadiq just has a profile of a guy that can have big performances. And I'm not expecting really anything early from him in this season. But we don't need it because Chig and Warren are going to have solid production throughout the year consistently. And then if Sadiq comes on late, gets healthier, and then like becomes a focal point of the offense late, then that can give us a real power player as we go through the playoffs. Like, you know, you get a 30-point score from a tight end, you're in a really good spot to advance. Like that's a real good start for your team. And I think we have 3 tight ends on this team that are capable of scoring 30 points, and there's really not many guys like that in the league. Chig You'd have to squint a little bit to see it, but, Sadiq has a profile for it where you could see, you know, 5 catches, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns type thing. Chig probably needs more volume. He'd probably be in that, 8 to 9 catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns to really hit that. He'd have to get a lot of volume, but I think that's in the range of possibilities, especially if there was an injury to McLaurin or Diggs. There's big time upside there. But, yeah, I like the blend of this team so far. We're real solid at running back, and we're chasing upside, but upside that has a pretty low floor too, because these guys are going to all have opportunities, all have targets. They're going to have weeks where they're usable. So, I like how this is falling. So, we could go Geno here. Not a lot at wide receiver. Kolar goes off the board there, it looks like, too. He does. 7 wide receivers. I got 4 spots left. Man, I don't really have any wide receivers that I'm in love with here. I think I'm just going to go. I think I'm going to double tap quarterback here and go 4 quarterback build with 2 big stacks. And then I'll go wide receiver to finish. A unique build here, but when we got the robust running backs that we do, we're making the bet that those 4 guys go ham. It allows us to put resources at other positions. And a big part of making it through that playoff run is having stacks of offenses that have big weeks. And we've got 4 really solid stacks with quarterbacks. So, 2 or 3 of these offenses go off. We're in a really good spot to advance and have a lot of fantasy production from there. Yeah, so I'm actually really happy with this team, and we can do some fun stuff in this last 2 rounds too at wide receiver. Actually thinking about maybe going Isaiah Bonds and Brennan Thompson to give us 2 more stacking partners. Let's see. I don't want to get overstacked. We could also maybe go like a Skylar Bell or a Keon Coleman if he falls. But I feel very confident that both Bond and Coleman are going to get run this year. And they're probably both going to be guys that have big plays, which seems like a pretty good recipe for around 19th and 20th pick, especially when we have both of their quarterbacks. I mean, our wide receiver room is extremely correlated. Bell and Bryant are the only guys that we don't have the quarterbacks with. But I don't hate it. I mean, we're definitely betting on the Jets to have an outlier season, which you don't love to be there. But I can also see it, though. At these prices, if they're just a top 15 offense, then these guys pay off their ADP. Probably only one of Hall or Wilson pay it off, but they both can have big games throughout the season, and maybe they ping pong off of each other through the playoffs on who has a big game. The other guy I was considering was Coleman and Bell. Okay, Coleman goes off the board, so we don't have to make that decision. Bell was mixing in a little bit, but I don't think he's going to have a big role. Bond, I feel good about. All right, that wraps it up. So, recap of our team drafting out of the 12 spot in the 5-5-5. This, my friends, is what $1 million looks like. And this is why I am the Milli Maker Maniac. All right, it is Kenneth Walker, Devon Achane, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Warren, Jonathan Brooks, Justin Herbert, Quentin Johnson, Casey Concepcion, Alex Pierce, Daniel Jones, Denzel Boston, Chig Okonkwo, Pat Bryant, Chris Bell, Kenyon Sadiq, Geno Smith, Shedeur Sanders, Isaiah Bond, and Brendan Thompson. We have 4 really nice stacks with our quarterbacks. We have the Chargers stack of Justin Herbert, Quentin Johnson, and Brendan Thompson. Then we have the Colts stack when they're really nice playoff schedule of Tennessee, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, which I really like the setup of that. But we got Daniel Jones, Alec Pierce, Tyler Warren. Then we are making a bet on the Jets, but they do have Arizona in week 15, so that could be super helpful. But we got Geno, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Kenyon Sadiq. And then we got my Cleveland Browns. I've made a ton of bets on the Browns being better than what people think and actually being a really great spot for fantasy points. Kind of thinking similar to last year's Cardinals, where Jacoby Brissett put up a lot of points and the receivers scored a lot of points. I think that is likely once Shedeur gets in there. But we got Shedeur, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, and Isaiah Bond. And then our last little stack is Devon Achane and Chris Bell. So we've made, with our entry into the 5-5-5, we made a bet on the Dolphins, the Browns, the Jets, the Colts, and the Chargers. I feel much better than I'm sure most of you in the audience do about that. But I'm pretty excited about this team. I really like the running back as the strength that makes it feel good from an advance rate standpoint. I feel really good about, 3 of these guys hitting my running back and flex spot each week. And then the correlation with the quarterback and the receivers, I think we'll get a really nice ping pong effect and take advantage of big outlier weeks when these quarterbacks go off. And I do think that their ceiling for these guys higher than most. And then, our tight end room, really solid with Warren, Okonkwo, and Sadiq. All right, my friends, thanks for tuning in. As always, please check out millimakermaniac.com. And please like and subscribe. Appreciate all your support. And we will talk to you soon. Good luck, Maniacs.